Alrighty, Adam. First up, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. I really wanted to get you on here for a while, and we kind of bounced around dates, and now we're finally here. I wanted to kind of talk to you about three different things that I think are really that you do that are really useful for my audience. One is talk about the pivot you made in your career and how you got to your business, mybodytutor.com, which is fantastic, and I've used myself. Second is around the psychology of achieving goals, no matter what they are and what stage of life you're at. And thirdly, around how your business is running into the future with AI and things like that. So why don't we start off with your early pivot? It certainly wasn't a midlife pivot, from working for a pretty traditional organization and into your own business. So why don't you give us the 101 on mybodytutor.com and your way into it?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me. This is, been looking forward to this for a long time, so I'm glad we're finally doing it. So yeah, I started my career at Ernst and Young, a Big Four accounting firm. And, from the first day, I knew it wasn't for me. And, I've always been really passionate about health and fitness. And that was spurred by really just witnessing my father's health decline. I witnessed him having a heart attack when I was in seventh grade. A few days later, he had triple bypass surgery. And then later that year, he was actually diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So seeing him deteriorate mentally and physically throughout the years until he passed away was really a huge impetus for, health, my obsession, fascination, and interest in health and fitness. So I always knew I wanted to do something with that. But I also had, my mom was very conventional, get a good job, work hard in school, et cetera. And I got, the best job I could for one of my majors, which was accounting, at the Big Four. But from day one, I knew it wasn't for me, and I was already plotting my exit. And while I was there, I kind of stumbled on the idea of My Body Tutor, which was, I was always known as the go-to guy for health and fitness. I would give partners and clients and colleagues and friends a plan. And, they would always love the plan because we would make it together on the phone or in person. But then it was always the same story. It was always, I love the plan you made for me, and the but was I got caught up with work, life, kids, whatever it might be. They weren't able to follow through. They weren't able to stick with it, right? And I would know this because we'd come up with the plan, and then I would see them a week or two later, depending on client obligations, and it was always the same story. It was the follow through. It was the sticking with it. That was the hard part. So I quit my job in January of 2007. My mom thought I was absolutely insane. Would always tell me that, people would, kill to be in my shoes. And I just knew this was my calling. This was my mission. So I quit in January 2007, started My Body Tutor the following month. And we've been at it ever since.
It's still a pretty big leap here, going from working for one of the big accounting firms to, right, I'm just going to start something. I mean, maybe youth gave you a little bit of protection in that. But what made you think it could turn into something?
For me, it was more just like this pressure. Like I had to do it. It's all I thought about. It truly was like a calling. I think there's a difference when you chase, an opportunity versus like a mission, right? An opportunity is just, you see an opportunity, this sounds good, let's pursue it. A mission is something you have to do no matter what. So for me, it was like, if this works, great. If it doesn't work, I'm still going to be doing this in some way or another. Right. And I think that in itself is a massive advantage in that, I could, I will outlast anyone because I would be doing this no matter what.
It brings up the thing. It's like the difference in a mission to a goal. Yeah. So a mission never finishes. A goal has an end point. So no matter what happens with a mission, if you're chasing it, it doesn't matter what gets in your way. The mission still exists. Yeah.
Exactly. We're very mission driven. Everything we do is about that mission, which is really to help people realize their full potential by helping them realize their, body's potential and their health's potential, because health is one of the one thing in life that truly impacts every aspect of life. And our mission has always been to help people stay consistent, with their diet and exercise, because when you do that, success is inevitable.
I remember when I first came across your business, which, was 15 years ago or something like that now. But I remember I stumbled on it through Noah Kagan and Neville Dora, who, if people are online, but
Yep.
probably know. And I remember them; they set themselves up some kind of challenge, and you helped them with their challenge. And the one thing they did say was, "Adam's really good at this. He's fantastic, but he's terrible at internet marketing." But clearly, but clearly that changed, and maybe they helped you out. But so, what were those early days like?
Yeah. So, I mean, the early days were really just about, and it's really very, much the same is just, I never really focused on marketing. I never really focused on growth. I was really obsessed with just offering the best service and best coaching possible. And that's, I've always said, like, we've always been very patient. We were very patient with our growth. One of my weird kind of goals was to hire people who had actually gone through the program themselves. So like John, our CTO, he was a client many, many years ago.
Oh, that's cool.
Jeremy, our, chief marketing officer, he was a client many, many years ago because I wanted people who really believed in the product, believed in the service. So I was patient in that regard because I ultimately also knew, like, if we're taking care of our clients and we're helping them when nothing else worked, they're gonna just inevitably talk about us. They're not gonna be able to help themselves. And that's thankfully worked out. I never fancied myself on being this, internet marketing guy because, I think, there's a lot of shady tactics or whatever, but it's also
Yeah.
just like if you do right by the client and they know that, like things, typically often take care of themselves.
Well, I guess those two guys are probably a pretty good example of the almost inadvertent marketing. It's absolutely word of mouth, and that's kind of how I stumbled across it.
Yep, exactly, exactly.
And so why don't you just give us a little bit of a view of where you went from to where you are and where the business is now?
Yeah. So, we've been at this for 19 years. I mean, this is crazy. It's year 19. We have over 75 coaches now. We've helped well over 10,000 plus people lose weight, get fit, and most importantly, you know, stay there, right? We're all about sustainable success. So we've been doing that. It's been incredible. And then actually talk about a pivot. For many, many years, people had been asking me, is there a My Body Tutor for productivity?
Yeah.
And, we didn't have an answer. We said no. And then finally, after like, the millionth time someone asked me, I'm like, why don't we do this? Like, this is what we know. We know accountability better than anyone. So a few years ago, we also launched Done Daily, which is productivity for, or I should say, it's accountability for productivity. So there's people, so many, us knowledge workers, we're just kind of working away, and what we found is a lot of people are just stuck all day long doing quote unquote urgent things, not important things, right? They're putting out fires all day. They're not really getting anything done meaningful. So we created Done Daily a few years ago. It's been amazing. Our clients are loving it. And of course, we're still, going strong with My Body Tutor, but it's been a nice complement to My
Yeah.
Body Tutor just because, just a different aspect of life. One is, fitness and health, and one is, business and productivity.
I remember actually back when I first started with you, and it was kind of like I remember emailing you back and saying, "Hey, you could do a money version of this, an accountability, like a financial accountability
Yeah.
piece." It's like the business is so. I mean, at face value is a diet exercise thing, and it's really really isn't it? It's a coaching accountability piece.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, disciplines we can go after. But, we really found that health and fitness and productivity really go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So they're a really nice complement. And, who knows? Maybe we'll pursue other avenues later on. But for now, we're really focused on those two, and it's been great.
Um. So in the newsletter and the podcast, we talk about people. I don't like to say reinventing, but reversioning themselves. So more often than not, when people make a change, it's not like they don't burn the house down, but in fact, probably shouldn't burn the house down and start something completely new, but should look into their past about, what it is they like doing or what it is actually, and more often than not, what they're good at as well, because turning hobbies into a business is, I think, a terrible idea at times.
Yeah.
But what have you learnt through coaching thousands and thousands of people, essentially being an accountability coach, are the things that get people from idea to done or on the way at least?
Yeah, I mean, so much of success is really psychology, right? It's what's going on between our ears. I mean, that's really what we focus on. I think that's a big differentiator in terms of what we do. We're not just giving people a diet or exercise plan. We're also helping them get out of their own way, right? So
Yeah.
there's all sorts of things that get in the way, whether it's fear of failure, fear of success, which is surprising but very common, self-sabotage, all or nothing thinking. There's so many things that get in the way that are going on between our ears that hold us back. So, a big part of what we do is we're helping people get out of their own way, right? So they can
Yes.
actually follow the plan we come up with. So I would say, the biggest thing I've learned is success. Tactics are certainly important. You have to have the roadmap, but if you don't
Yeah.
have the right psychology, if you don't, overcome those mental roadblocks, you're never going to get to where you want to be.
Why do you think it is that people? I mean, I've done a bit of coaching in my time as well, and it's kind of like the trick. I don't want to say the trick, but the idea is often to people know the answers themselves, and My Body Tutor part of your business is a prime example of that. And you talk about broccoli all the time. People know broccoli is good for them. It's like, but they don't eat broccoli, and yet in theory, we're supposed to be like driven to do what's good for us or what benefits us. Yet so often we don't. Why is that? Do we think?
Well, I think for food, I mean, people use food, as a coping mechanism, right? Anytime they feel discomfort, they're reaching for food, right?
Right.
Anytime they're frustrated or they're sad or they're fearful, they're overwhelmed, or they need a quick dose of pleasure, whatever it might be, they're using food. So, there's a part of all of us that, wants what we want, right? We have our goals, we have our dreams. I call that like the long-term, rational part of our brain. But then there's the part of us that just, wants to do nothing and relax and chill and eat and that's the short-term irrational part of our brain. And there's this constant battle, right? There's that duality. So, it's really important, A, that you have, a plan that is actually doable and practical. But then, I'm obviously very much a believer in accountability to put those intentions and those desires into action. And that's a big part of it.
What what do you find that most people don't understand about themselves, or do they know it already and they just need prodding all the time?
Um, well, one of the things I've learned is, I can't help someone solve their problems or challenges until I find out why they like having those problems or challenges.
Sure. Yeah.
In other words, every behavior has a motivation, right? So, like, you can say, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. That's reinforcing. There's a reason you're telling yourself that, right?
Yep.
Maybe you're scared to do the uncomfortable work. Maybe you're scared to do the things that will actually move the needle. You could say, I don't want to lose weight for a million reasons, right? There's a reason you're saying that, right? Being overweight, being unhealthy is serving you in some way,
Yes.
right? For
Yes.
many
Yeah.
people, it's like, once I because the thing is, being overweight could be a security blanket, and once you
Yeah.
lose the weight, then it's like, well, now what? What am I going to say to myself now? So
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Sure.
biggest thing is understanding why they're doing what they do, getting to the root of the issue. Um, that's often a huge unlock for our clients is really helping them understand that. And of course, also getting whatever behaviors they're trying to change or habits they want to change, understanding the root causes, the triggers, and then working on different responses. But yeah, there's a lot going on there.
When when you are coaching somebody or have somebody come through either the productivity or the body fitness part, what what unlock do you see once somebody has made some progress? Have you seen it affect other? Yeah, how does it affect the rest of their lives?
It affects every aspect of life. So one of the things I love the most is like even after a few weeks of, let's say, someone eating really healthfully, they're exercising consistently, they feel good, they feel incredible. And of course, there's many, many reasons, but one of the reasons is it's like this lead balloon that was hanging over their head. This lead balloon of like, I should prioritize my health. I want to eat healthy. I should
Yeah.
exercise. And they know they're not doing that. And it like holds them back. So when they're finally taking action and consistent action and doing that, it feels amazing, right? Because they're no longer, they don't, they no longer have that guilt, right? It's not weighing them down anymore. So that's a big part of it. So we have that. Plus, there's the confidence of doing what you say you're going to do. Um, and when you build that confidence, it spills over into every other aspect of life. I mean, I can't tell you how many of our clients throughout the years we've helped them, lose weight, get fit, and they're suddenly telling us like all these other changes they want to make. That's not a coincidence.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Um, so if we I kind of look back at My Body Tutor and how long it's been in the market and um, the success it's had, and I think about the things we talk about on the podcast and in the newsletter, and about making change, or about potentially setting up their own people setting up their own kind of business, and making big changes in their lives. What what would you view as the primary reasons people don't make change?
Fear. Fear,
Right.
no doubt. There's just, we all have these stories and these narratives we tell ourselves. And again, many times they are serving us in some way, but we have to unlock that fear, right? Self-sabotage is a very big, um, kind of roadblock for people. And my definition of self-sabotage is when we fear the very thing we say we want to accomplish, right? We fear the very thing we
Right.
say we want to accomplish. So someone could say, for example, they want to lose weight. Or let's even say you take a business owner, for example, right? A business owner, any good business owner wants to serve people. They want to help people. They want to make a difference. But many business owners feel like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders. They feel like they have no free time. And on some level, they feel like if they grow, if they serve more people, they're going to have even less free time, right? They're going to
Sure.
have even more responsibility. So no matter what they do, and they could buy the best books and courses and coaches, there's going to be this constant like, foot on the gas, foot on the brake, foot on the gas, foot on the brake, because there's a part of them that actually believes when they grow, when they serve more people, their life will actually be worse off, not better
Right.
off. So until we figure that out, until we reconcile that, they're going to constantly self-sabotage. There's going to be a few days where they're doing great. There's going to be a few days where they're, kind of not doing anything. They're inconsistent. That's a prime example of self-sabotage. And that's the work we do, is to help them uncover that, so they realize like, hey, actually, when I grow, when I serve more people, life will be better off, not worse off.
Right. One of the things I think comes across a lot, and in fact, I find it in myself as well. A lot of this is a big tell on myself all the time, but the the comfort of now is has jeopardy. I'm not explaining that very well, but not doing anything is as dangerous as doing something. And often I think we overlook that. If you don't do something which feels comfortable, does actually have risk. Do you know what I mean?
Massive risk. So I think this doesn't get talked about often enough. The cost of inaction is massive. Recently I was cleaning out my garage, and we realized, like, my wife and I were doing it, and we realized there were things there that have been there for 6 years. We
Yeah.
moved in, we put them in this place, and they've literally just been sitting there for 6 years. And inertia, to me, is very, very scary, because if you don't do anything about it, I mean, those things, if we didn't clean out the garage, they'd be sitting there for another 6 years. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important to think about how your typical day goes, how your typical week goes. And do you want another, let's say 51 of those, or do you want another 20 years of that? Because if you don't make changes, that's how your life is going to turn out.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great point. The cost of inaction is very, very scary. And again, it does not get talked about often enough.
Do you notice? So obviously, not obviously, but the newsletter and the podcast talks to mostly probably 50 plus, where a lot of people find themselves the comfort. I talk about this quite a bit, but it's the whole rubber band thing. Yeah. So if you got a rubber band that's been sitting in a cupboard for ages, and you take it out and you try and stretch it, it snaps. Whereas if
Mhm.
you're stretching it all the time, it keeps its elasticity.
Yep.
And I find people, as we get older and we don't do as many new things or try as many new things, we end up being brittle. I've used this analogy a bunch, but I think it's really important. Do you see that in your older clients?
Yeah, I think I see it just in people in general. I think it's human nature. And one of the things I've realized And I talk about this a lot because I think it's so important. It's like it's interesting. As we age, we seek comfort. And again, I think that's human nature, right? It's not necessarily fun to be uncomfortable, although I think
Yeah.
being uncomfortable gets a bad rap, and we can talk
Yeah.
about that later if you want. But as we age, we seek comfort. But the reality is the more we seek comfort, the faster we're going to age. So
Yeah.
I'm a very big proponent of doing uncomfortable things. And I love self-imposed discomfort because it trains us for when the inevitable, you know, life throws its punches at us, right? If
Yeah.
we're able to handle a little discomfort on our own that we're doing to ourselves, it becomes a little easier and sometimes a lot easier when life inevitably lifes. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's really, really important.
Yeah, I always say, it gets you ready for when the shit comes because the shit will come.
Yes,
No,
exactly.
it's inevitable.
It is inevitable, no doubt.
Yeah. So you mentioned there that being actively discomfort, or being actively in discomfort. What does that
Yeah.
look like to you, and how do you teach that, or how do you pass that on to your clients?
Yeah, well, I think first off, it's helpful to have a definition of it, right? And I think just talking about what discomfort is. And, you know, if we do what we've always done, that's going to feel comfortable. It's as
Yep.
simple as that. It's going to feel comfortable. And if we do something different, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And it just means we haven't done it yet. It's just new. And I
Yep.
think going into anytime you're about to embark on a change and say, hey, A, there's going to be discomfort, but also just understanding what it means, it just means we're doing something different. And
Yep.
the good thing is, and the important thing to remind yourself is like what's easy now was once hard. What's uncomfortable now will soon be comfortable if you stick with it, if you practice it long enough. So that's first and foremost, is just understanding discomfort is not a bad thing. It's not a hard thing. It doesn't mean we're asking you to run a marathon
Yeah.
or quit your job cold turkey. It just means you're doing
Mhm.
something different. And I love talking about that because understanding that discomfort simply means it's our compass. It lets us know we're going in the right direction. That's a very, very helpful tool.
I
So that's
always think
first
of
and foremost.
I always think of Ryan Holiday's. In fact, my daughter gets sick of me saying this. Ryan Holiday's "The obstacle is the way." It's always the thing that you don't want to do is actually the right way to go. Um, I also
Exactly.
think, yeah, I also think this can't be underestimated in a not being afraid to be a beginner is another thing that gets harder as we get older because we're meant to be accomplished. We've found status in our career or in our personal lives or whatever it is, and doing something new is a challenge to our I don't know our perception of ourselves, and
Hmm.
remaining curious and being a beginner is actually quite difficult. Is it similar? Do you think?
I think so. I very much agree. And I think the key is to allow yourself to start small, right? So, granted, I was much younger when I made that pivot and started My Body
Yeah,
Tutor. I was in my early 20s. But what held me back, and I was at Ernst and Young for 2 years. If I had it my way, I would have left even earlier. But the reason why I didn't leave, it took me 2 years is I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something health and fitness, but I kept thinking I had to start, the next Facebook, the next Google. And like it was almost like it was the idea of creating something too big or something big was daunting and it made it impossible. And it wasn't until I realized like small is the new big. Start small. And what I
yeah,
realized I loved doing was coaching people. I loved helping people transform themselves mentally and physically. That's what I loved. And the huge shift was like, all right, so do that. Start with one person, then the next, and then the next. And literally, my body tutor started with 3 clients. And now
yeah,
we've been at this for 19 years, and it all started from 3 clients. So I always like to say, like, start small. And if that doesn't feel small enough, ask yourself, what's the least I can do without doing nothing? But allow yourself to go
yeah,
small. And I also think treating it as an experiment is really helpful as well. For some reason, and
yeah,
for me as well, like using the word project or experiment makes it a lot easier versus like, this is my job or this is my whatever.
yeah,
But an
yeah.
experiment or project, by definition, it allows you to just, have those ups and downs.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think about that a lot. Um, Actually, this just came to me. I was just thinking, and I know it's has a massive effect on younger people because I've got kids or grown up kids now, but what social media has done to children, and it's been pretty complicated. Do you find the same thing with adults that they start having unrealistic expectations? And I'm thinking about that from like the health and fitness point, but also and from the business point and the lifestyle point. Every day we're getting fed, grand views of life that may or may not be true. And people think, well, if I just, what's the point in just going to the gym if I'm not going to have a six pack? Or what's the point in, starting a business if I'm not going to have the Lamborghini or whatever it is? The expectations people place on themselves just seem way out of whack.
Yeah, you're striking a chord, man. I'm actually working on a post about this because I have such a love-hate relationship with social media. I think social media can be great. It allows
Yeah.
you to stay in touch with people, and you can learn some things. But you have to be really, really careful. You have to be careful of who you follow, what you see, just because that ultimately is going to become your thoughts. That's going to become your standards. It's going to become your expectations. And
Yeah.
like if you're following, a fitness person, for example, like so many of these quote unquote fitness experts, like they do nothing but take care of themselves all day and make content. Like that's not a
Yeah.
way to live. That's not sustainable or desirable or practical,
Yeah.
right? And you have no idea what else they're doing, what they're taking, like if you're, there's just so many things you have to be careful. There's a lot of business people who will show you their flashy cars and their, house. And often at times it's not even actually theirs. They're just renting it or they're borrowing it or they're at some other place. Like you really, really have to be careful and understand what it is they're trying to sell you. And yeah, you have to audit your feed because your feed becomes your thoughts. It becomes your
Yeah.
expectations and standard, no doubt.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we, as adults, we just automatically assume it's damaging for the youth, and completely ignore ourselves.
Yes. I mean, I talk to adults all the time and they're like, I saw this person talk about this person talk about that. And I'm like, okay, like great, I get it, but like what makes them an expert? How long have they been doing this? How many people have they helped? And it's like, listen, social media amplifies voices, good ones and bad ones, and you just have to be careful. The most recent one, and I hear it all the time, is just like protein. It's like fitness people just discovered protein,
Yeah.
you know, like it's never existed before. And I can't tell how many people I talk to who are overeating protein because some person on the internet told them they need to eat X amount of grams per pound of body weight. And they're overeating at the expense of trying to, or they're trying to get this certain amount of grams of protein and they're overeating because of that. I mean, there's just countless examples. You really just need to be careful.
I always think of it because that protein thing I've noticed is kind of like you go to the hospital, you don't see wards of people that are there because they're deficient in protein. It's kind of like
Right.
it's just
Right.
and I always think also about and I'm a kind of a fan of David Goggins. It's kind of like, but you don't want to be David Goggins.
Right.
It's just not realistic and probably not healthy.
Right. He's
Um,
the extreme, right? When you talk about
yeah,
discomfort, he's the extreme. And like, there's no doubt. And, everyone, sometimes or some people like that approach and want that just extreme version. But to me, we always like to meet clients where they're at. But yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting to see the extremes, no doubt.
Um, Difference between the way men and women approach this kind of stuff. I mean, I know, just through following your business over the years, you have an equal amount of, well, I don't know if it's equal, but a lot of women and a lot of men. Is there a difference in the way men and women approach these things?
It's interesting. Yeah, I guess there's certainly a difference. I mean, I think one of the things, um, I think a lot of women come to us because of how they feel or how they don't feel. They want to feel a
Right.
certain way and they want to get back to it. And often vanity, and of course they want to look good, and that's
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like
Sure.
it seems like women come to us because they don't feel like themselves anymore, and they want help getting back to their old selves.
Yeah.
Whereas I think men come to us, it's a little more vanity focused. It's like, hey, I need to lose weight, But it's interesting because once they start losing weight, they realize how great they feel. So I'd say
Yeah.
men probably actually counterintuitively maybe focus more on like the weight loss itself. And of course,
Right.
women want to lose weight too, but it's often like, hey, I don't feel the way I know I can feel. I don't feel good. I
Yeah.
want help with that.
That's interesting. Um, so your business has shown really good longevity. It's worked really well. A lot of people, particularly around my age, are talking about, they're either talking about starting something new, or they're worried that their current job is going to be gobbled up by AI, or, they're just anxious around what's coming around the corner. With with your business, one of the things I've noted, and I kind of preach quite a bit, is it's a it's partially about community and accountability. Um, the things that AI isn't good at is personal accountability and creating community. And I kind of look at what you've done, and you could go, oh my gosh, somebody can build an app using Claude now that will wake them in the morning, tell them what to eat, then tell them how many calories it was, and you know tick a box that puts a line through it like a to-do list, and you'd go, oh, well, that's My Body Tutor done, or the productivity business done. What do you think it is that sets you apart in that space?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. Like we've never been in the information business. Our thesis from day one is it's
Yeah,
never been a lack of knowledge, it's been a lack of consistent action. So AI certainly makes knowledge prevalent and makes it more and more readily available, which is great. Sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. But that's never been the service we offer. For us, it's all about human to human connection, human to human relationships, right? And to me, the ultimate test is, would you feel bad letting AI down? Right? And the answer is
yeah,
almost always no, right? Who cares if you let AI down? So for us, it's that human to human connection. It's also that human expertise of helping you get out of your own way, spotting patterns, spotting, beliefs and limiting beliefs, and helping you get out of your own way. So for us, knowledge, great. More knowledge, the more knowledge, the merrier. But that's never been the issue. For us, it's all about consistent action. That's what we're solving for our clients is consistency. It's not necessarily a lack of knowledge.
yeah. I, there's a famous line. I can't remember where it came from. It's like, if if knowledge was the issue, we'd all have six packs and Ferraris. And
Right.
clearly we don't. It's kind of like the knowledge is there. You can get the knowledge on YouTube, AI, whatever. It's
Right.
it's the taking the action. Yeah,
Yes. And that's what we specialize in is helping people take action consistently. And when you do that consistently, when you take action consistently, you know, incredible success happens, incredible results, are yielded.
I guess the other big technology that's kind of coming down the pike, and which you would be bumping into, is the GLP piece. Yeah, GLP ones.
Yeah.
What's your view? And I guess this is a little bit out of our kind of subject matter, but what's your view around that, and how useful that's going to be in the future, and what that means for you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, for some people, GLP-1s are a lifesaver and they've
Yeah,
done, a lot of help. And, you know, um, for many people, or I should say for some people, the pros certainly outweigh the cons. But GLP-1s, solve hunger or they help with hunger. They help with
yeah,
satiety, right? Satiety. But they don't solve habits and they don't
yeah,
solve behavior. And that's
yeah,
what we do, right? So for us, we view it as a tool. And we work with many people who are on them. We work with people who come to us and they want to taper off because they don't want to take a drug for the rest of their life.
yeah,
We work with people who've tried it, and it didn't do anything for them.
yeah.
So for us, it's just another tool in the toolbox, but nothing is ever going to beat habit change and behavior change and changing your relationship with food. I mean, that is the only sustainable thing there is, truly, right? Where you don't have
Yeah.
to use something or take something for the rest of your life. So for us, it's just, it's another thing. It's another tool.
Yeah, I guess as I was saying it, I was kind of thinking, in a lot of ways, it could be helpful to your clients to be doing both, in that, it takes away the immediate hunger issue, but that opens a space for thinking about what the future might look like, and them being in a more sort of available space to think about those types of things.
Totally. Absolutely. And, for some people, it really does help with food noise, and it gives them the space and the capacity to really work on the things we teach. Right. So yeah, I mean, for us, it's just another tool.
Yeah.
I don't think it's binary. It's not one or the other. For many, it's a perfect complement to the work we do. For many, they want to get off them, and it was a great jumpstart. So yeah, it's been good.
Um, like I said earlier, I've been following along you for 15 odd years and have been a client and found great results, and it was an amazing and really useful experience. And but
Thank
during
you.
that whole time, I've also seen, somewhat bizarrely, considering I've never met you, I've kind of seen how your life has changed and progressed, and you've seen seen mine from afar as well. And I saw you move from Manhattan out to out of Manhattan. You've now got two kids. It's kind of like your life is traveling along. What is it, do you think, that you would say to somebody who's looking at some kind of change, and how it can affect their lives, and also what doing this has done for you, if that's not too convoluted a question?
Yeah, I mean, I think. Well, let me start with the second question. What doing this has done for me? So, you know, when I was working at Ernst and Young, I was miserable every day. Like I literally within the first week, I had a stomach ache walking to work because I knew I wasn't doing what I was meant to be doing. So for me, like this has been, besides being a dad, I mean, this has been the greatest joy of my life. I mean, helping people transform themselves, helping people lose weight, helping people get fit, helping people stay productive. Like that is real, truly life changing stuff. And hearing our clients every single day, I mean, that never, ever, ever gets old. So for me, it's just been the greatest joy. I mean, and every day that I'm not at Ernst and Young is an amazing day. And it's been 19 years. So, for me, I'm just thrilled and extremely grateful that we get to do what we do. Because there's, when you love what you do, I mean, the old saying, right? You never work a day in your life. So, I'm very grateful for that. And it's changed me in that, like, I realize like, hey, you know, loving what you do is a gift and it's not something we will ever take for granted.
Well, that seems like a really good place to put a pin in it. I've really enjoyed seeing you face to face for the for the first time in 15, 16 years. Um, I highly recommend your business. I went from, I was the classic, not necessarily looking fat, but I was sitting in an office chair, unable to think too far ahead. And it's fair to say, with your help, I went and did an Ironman. That was not, I mean, I had an Ironman coach as well, but that certainly got me going, and it was really useful. And I really enjoy following you along, and I like seeing, where you guys have got to and how it's going. So thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it, Alan. It's been really fun. I really, really appreciate your support throughout the years. I can't believe how long it's been. Um, yeah, it's been fun, and I appreciate the support. It means a lot.
Cheers, Adam.